Hello and welcome to Doubles and Trebles. We're back with our weekly Premier League preview looking at night 11. And in this video, Pine Man, there's going to be a world exclusive. So make sure you stay tuned in. And I'm going to give you a world exclusive. And it's going to be of how to stop James Wade. And I've got the solution for that. But first, we're going to look back on week 10, in which James Wade won his first night of the Premier League 2022, and deservedly so. He's now made a final in his last 3 weeks, and he very much, he very much deserved to go on and win one, and that's exactly what he did in week 10. He beat Joe Cullen 6-5 in the final. He averaged 105, and it's the best I've seen James Wade for a long time. Now, to say it's the best you've ever seen James Wade is going some. This man has won 6, 7, 8 majors, whatever it is, over 15 years, but it's the best I've seen him in a pretty long time, and hitting them 180s more often than I would expect, Pieman, plus all the usual stuff that vintage James Wade does. So that's where we'll start. Week 10, James Wade, talk to me.
Yeah, brilliant. Delighted for James Wade to get that first win of the Premier League. It's taken him 10 weeks, but like you say, he'd been threatening to do so. We were both pretty bullish on his chances last week, and he duly delivered against Joe Cullen in the final. A surprise finalist for me, to be honest. Joe Cullen, not someone who's been on my radar in recent weeks, but fair play to him, dug in and got a couple of results. Wade, a worthy winner, though. Probably said his best start on the night for the final. I thought he was really impressive in that final. And what you're saying about Wade and potentially the best we've seen him ever, and that being a difficult thing to gauge. This is a multiple TV title winner, major winner. Been doing it for the best part of 2 decades and the rest. So, yeah, it's difficult to say that this is the best we've seen him. But I think it's a different James Wade to what we usually see, in that he isn't being outscored. Normally, he's a grinder who has to rely on very good finishing, which he does virtually all the time, to get his results. But he seems to have found some scoring to me in the last few weeks. 140s and 180s have gone up a notch. And then combining that with the confidence he's getting from that is translated through into his finishing. And he just looks really, really relaxed. Even when he went behind early in that final, didn't panic, completely sorted it out. And he was never flustered at any point throughout the evening. Really, really like what I'm seeing from James Wade. And I just wonder whether, with this new format and the intensity of it, and a winner every night, and we had all these different winners in the first few weeks, I just wonder whether, now that the dust has settled a little bit on that, we're seeing Wade's experience just kick in. He was just grinding these weeks out, where these other players have maybe, got an early win under their belt and then they're getting a bit flustered looking for that second win. He didn't get an early win under his belt. He's just grinded away, kept doing what he does best. And the last couple of weeks he's been threatening it, and then last week it all comes together for him. And look, he'd get 3 points for getting to a final, 5 points for winning it. So that is 11 points of his 17 picked up in the last 3 weeks. So 3 weeks ago he had Gary Anderson's points total. Puts 3 good weeks together, and now he's in that third place qualifying spot, and everyone's high on James Wade. And because he's not as reactive as other players week to week, I think that's maybe playing in his favour over this 16-week league format.
Well, you mentioned Gary Anderson there, Pine Man. It's 4 weeks since you was on here, bullish of Gary Anderson's chances of making it to the playoffs and saying he was an outside bet. Since then, he's missed 1 week with COVID and he's gone out in the first round in the other 3 weeks. So that's just a note on Gary Anderson's form, and obviously a dig at yourself, and deservedly so. Wade smashed Gary Anderson in the first round last week. Just on Wade, Pine Man, and we talk about his scoring, I'm going to hit you with a stat. This isn't the world exclusive, that is still to come. But James Wade, on the scores of 100 or more in the Premier League this year, 253. He tops the table of the 8 players with scores above 100. And he's second out of the 8 in scores above 140. That's he's got 146 of those. Peter Wright.
Johnny Clayton ahead of him, maybe?
No, it's only Peter Wright that betters him in that department, Pie Man, on 149, and Johnny Clayton just a couple behind on 144, as you would expect from Johnny Clayton. So yeah, like you say, the stats are there for him in recent weeks. I think that James Wade has seen this as a real opportunity after the first few weeks. You can see him maybe being quite calculated. I know it's not a ranking event, but I don't. He's not won the Premier League before, has he, Pie Man? Overall, I think he's made a final, possibly. But I think he's looking at this. Maybe Peter Wright's messing with his darts every week, particularly in the Premier League. Dare to be beat. Gerwin Price is injured, there to be beat. Joe Cullen possibly lacks experience in this format on the big stage. Michael Smith and Gary Anderson are out of form. So we might be sitting there thinking, well, the only man I've really got to keep up with and maybe beat on the night is Michael van Gerwen. When we're looking towards finals nights, we're well beyond halfway now, and he's got to be a leading player. In the outright, he's still probably underestimated in the outright markets, Pyman. After 10 weeks, James Wade can be backed at 9-1. He's still at the Van Gerwen at the top, as you'd expect, 9-4 favourite. But James Wade's in there at 9-1. Gary Anderson, since you put him up at 25-1 a few weeks ago, is now available at 100. Just to let you know about that one, Pyman. But any further comments on week 10, what we saw in Manchester from any of the other players?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wasn't very impressed with Peter Wright's doubling, but that is by the by because we know he can do that some weeks. It's just happening a little bit too often for my liking at the moment. And I think the way Wright's messing on, he might find himself struggling for that top 4 finish. As you say, the weeks are starting to tick by now. And while he can always rely on the odd week where he puts it all together, that might not be enough when you've got the likes of Wade, Clayton and Van Gerwen in particular showing some really good consistency to the game. And I think you probably have to say that you'd be surprised if those 3 didn't make the top 4 the way that they're playing every week. They're turning up and playing well. Possibly the other 5 are playing for one spot. Yeah, Gary Anderson, I'll take it on the chin. I mean, I put up the outsider of the field last year and he won at 33-1. We didn't see a big fanfare for that, did we? With Gary Anderson, I mean, 3 of the 4 weeks he's gone out first round, he's lost 6-5. The one night before that where he won 6-5, he won the night. So it is one of these where you sometimes need the coin to fall your way over the short format. Yeah, he's out of form, but I wouldn't be surprised if he turns up and wins this week. He's that kind of player. He's very erratic. And yeah, he is what he is, really. Wade at 9-1 is about the right price for me, to be honest, because although I do think he's going to get to finals night, probably, he's still got to go and do it against a Van Gerwen and potentially a Clayton in the semi-final and the final. That's hard work, especially over the longer format where their scoring will come into play more. You would think, can Wade continue this fine purple patch that he's on? Remains to be seen. He certainly looks comfortable and he's got all the experience in the world to do so. As I said, Joe Cullen definitely deserves a mention from last week. Surprise finalist. He's been struggling for form recently, but every win he gets in this format, I think, is good for him going forward because I've said it before on these previews. This is a big learning experience for Cullen being up there with these big players every week in front of a big arena. And I think when you come to the likes of the match play, the Grand Prix, Joe Cullen wants to win major titles at this point in his career. These experiences are all ones that he'll be able to dwell on further down the line. Beating Van Gerwen in Rotterdam, for example, and grinding his way to a final this week as well. It's all good signs, encouraging signs for Joe Cullen. Little bit worried about Gerwin Price. Don't think there's anything to panic about, but he's very much aware that his Premier League record is not good. He talked very strongly about wanting to come and win this competition now, and I just wonder whether he's putting a little bit too much pressure on himself. He's played through his hand injury. The wins aren't really coming for him as he may have expected, and you wonder whether, as we get into these final weeks, if he needs to go and win the night, whether it's going to affect him adversely or positively. He's always risen to every challenge in the last couple of years that we've seen. Are we going to see him take it up a notch? You wouldn't be surprised if he goes and wins back-to-back weeks. But equally, yeah, time is running out. And Michael Smith, the last person I want to mention, the struggles continue. I really feel like this format has beaten him down. We've seen it happen to a few players over years gone by. When you get deep in and your chances are dwindling, and I think he is beating himself up now, Michael Smith. And to be honest, I'd be surprised if he does manage to win a week the way he's going.
Well, he's gone out in the first round on the last 4 occasions. Michael Smith, Pyman, 7 overall out of 10 weeks. He's gone out in what is named the quarterfinal. So yeah, you've got to be concerned about him. Right, on to week 11. We're in Aberdeen, Pyman. So there's 2 Scotsmen that don't spend a lot of time in Scotland. Going to be there with the fans behind them. But yeah, I think that they both could actually get beat in the first round and both go out early doors. If Gary Anderson and Peter Wright were to win their opening games, they would play each other in an all-Scottish semi-final. So yeah, the first game is Johnny Clayton against Gary Anderson. We've spoken the last couple of weeks, Pam, where the odds have been real coin toss games, the first 4 games that are priced up. This Johnny Clayton at 2-5 is the shortest price I think we've previewed at all this season. You can get 11-5 about Gary Anderson. That's over 2-1. You're an Anderson fan. would you be backing him at 11-5?
Clayton's probably the only man I wouldn't want to aggressively take on in this format, to be honest, because he's just playing so solid. He did have a little dip for a few weeks where he just went off the boil a bit, but since he's rolled back with that win, it's looked vintage Johnny Clayton to me, and I'd be cautious of taking him on. But God, yeah, these quality of players over 11 legs, I'd be very interested in anyone over 2-1. Any of these guys can beat any of the other ones if they turn up. Gary Anderson, as I say, wasn't really at the races last week, but prior weeks he's lost in last leg deciders, 2 of the 3's mismatched darts. So he's not getting hammered on a regular basis. This isn't someone who's detached at the end of the league and just a whipping boy, as we've seen in other years where players have looked a tad out of their depth in this competition. This isn't the case. As I say, if it was anyone but Johnny Clayton, I'd be very keen to get with Anderson at above 2-1. I still wouldn't put anyone off it just because I think this short format is very, very easy to get favourites turned over. And that's why I don't like accumulators on this, to be honest. But yeah, no, I wouldn't be in a rush to oppose Johnny Clayton, to be honest. No bet from me.
And also got the luxury of throwing first as well, Johnny Clayton in that one, and like I say, over the short format, that is key. Next game, Peter Wright versus Joe Cullen. Wright's 4-7, Cullen 6-4. Yeah, again, we say this every week, I know, but another tough one to score. What I would look at in that is the 180s. Joe Cullen has hit a load of 180s. He's top of the 180s league on 55. Peter Wright's not far behind on 52. So I would be looking at the 180s in that one, possibly. But yeah, where would your money be going there, Pi?
I'd edge towards Peter Wright, actually. For all I've kind of slated him off, he has only gone out in the first round on 3 occasions in the first 10 weeks, so he's pretty solid. These opening games, we often see the players warm into the task and maybe averaging around the low to mid 90s before upping it later in the night. There's been a few exceptions to that, largely Michael van Gerwin, who seems to have this innate ability to hit the ground running with a ton plus average from standing start. But no, Peter Wright, I think I can see this being a close game, and that tends to suit Peter Wright, to be honest. These guys, as I say, both averaging around the mid 90s, and maybe Wright to just grind it out 6-4. I'd be inclined to maybe play the scoreline, actually. I could see a 6-4 or a 6-5 Wright, going narrow, and then maybe just in them key legs at the end, Wright just having enough to get over the line.
Yeah, and another game that I think where it should be shorter. For everything we've said in the first 10 minutes of this video regarding form, James Wade, you can get him at nearly even money to beat Michael Smith. The best price out there is, he's around 4-5, 5-6. I mean, Pie Man, is that not the best value darts bet we've seen for some time on doubles and trebles?
Maybe. I think you're right. I think that is the pick, Wade, definitely. I'm just.
But this is how we stop him, though, Pie Man. This is how we stop him. Just while you ponder that, this is how we stop James Wade. He's made 3 finals in a row. He won last week. I will stop James Wade from winning because I'm going to back him to beat Michael Smith at 5-6. So that'll be it. The James Wade run will end this Thursday in Aberdeen because I'm backing him.
I can assure you it will if you are backing him. Yeah, that's put me right off anyway. No, he is the bet, and you're seeing him. You could see him shorten. I think that 4-5 is a bit more like it. Anything above 4-5 is probably value, but I wouldn't be rushing to say it's a huge lump job because I think Michael Smith is such a difficult player to get right, as is Wade. But Wade is showing like a consistency to his game at the moment, and we like that because we're not used to seeing James Wade as a reliable type. He's normally that grinder that we discussed time and time again. But Michael Smith is a really intricate mental player to me. He overthinks all of these games. When he's in a good headspace, he wins. When he's not, he loses. He can lose from the jaws of victory and vice versa. I think Michael Smith looks at James Wade as the kind of player he should beat. And I think Michael Smith maybe comes onto the stage thinking he should beat James Wade. Whereas I think an out of form Michael Smith compares himself to the likes of Van Gerwin and Price, power scorers, and he thinks, oh, if I'm not at it, I'm going to get beat here. He probably thinks in his head here, if I turn up 80%, I should be beating James Wade. He's that kind of player, Michael Smith. You listen to him talk in his interviews, he's very much someone who, he has an idea of where he is in the pecking order, and he knows he has to be at his best to beat a Clayton, Van Gerwin, Price. But he also thinks he has a B game that can beat most players. And I just wonder whether he looks at Wade as one of these players that he should beat with his B game. And if he comes with the right mindset, he could do it. And over the short format, that also puts me off a tad. But yes, purely on the form book, purely on what we've seen for the last few weeks, you have to say that Wade is the value selection of the two.
Yeah, on to the fourth and final game. It's going to be Gerwin Price against Michael van Gerwen. Now, in normal times, this would be a massive game, and one that everyone's looking forward to. But with Gerwin Price, it still is obviously, but with Gerwin Price's injury / not in great form in the Premier League, yeah, it takes a little bit away from it. But it is a coin toss. This is the closest game in the betting of the four. Just in front of Wade and Smith in them terms. But yeah, Gerwin Price is 11-10. Van Gerwen's at 10-11. There's only one player I'll be backing in this one, Pyman. But as always, the usual caveat: short format, etc., etc.
Short format, yeah. Gerwin Price has the throw. That may put people off Van Gerwen a little bit, but no, I'll be with you. I think that they're both putting it around the same price. It's priced like a coin toss, and on the form, it's not. Van Gerwen is playing better than Gerwin Price. Make no mistake, if you go on odds checker as we speak, you'll see a sea of blue for Michael van Gerwen. I expect him to go off a little bit shorter than what he is at time of recording. And again, it'd be a game where I'd be playing the scores. I could see Van Gerwen doing this with an element of comfort, actually. I think you can get 6-2 and 6-3 at 9-1. I think if you played half a point on each, you'd have a very good chance of landing there, because I think he's just playing a level above Price at the moment. I think he'll get a break early and probably make fairly light work of Price. And that's no detriment to Price's game. I just think Van Gerwen's in a really good headspace. So, yeah, I'll be playing 6-2 and 6-3 Van Gerwen with a split stake.
Great, love it. So that leaves us, Pyman. The usual market that you look at is naming the finalists. You nearly landed it, didn't you, last week?
We were odds on in running for a 16-1 chance.
Yeah, you said Clayton and Wade. Clayton probably felt like he should have beat Cullen in that semi-final.
Yeah,
couple
way
of
off
missed
it,
doubles.
Way off.
Yeah, so yeah, where's the name the finalists Pyman special this weekend?
Yeah, don't know if we could follow that up. I mean, it was Wade. It was the form of Wade that made me interested in that 16-1. And yeah, I thought Clayton was the most likely person to meet him in the final. And as you say, going into the final, with the semis, we looked in a really good spot. The 16-1 chance effectively came to Johnny Clayton being a 2s-on chance to beat Joe Cullen and join Wade in the final. Unfortunately, he could have got turned over, although theoretically you could have laid off by backing Cullen. So hopefully all the shrewd followers that flock to that price have got laid off. But I don't know. In terms of finalists, and looking at the top of that draw, I just can't look away from Johnny Clayton, to be honest. And then, yeah, maybe looking at Van Gerwen, but look, they're obviously at the top of that market. It's 6-1 for a Clayton Van Gerwen final. You're still getting a good run for your money with that for me. I don't know if you've got a different opinion to that.
Well, yeah, I would be. I always try and look for a bit of a bigger price, but yeah, I mean. But yeah, I couldn't really argue, Pyman. Maybe the Scottish crowd are going to get into, I don't know whether Peter Wright might fancy it for on this occasion. And
that's a good show. I couldn't disagree too strongly with that. If he does fancy it, we all know what he can do. But for me, it just looks like one of those weeks where Clayton potentially has a fairly straightforward first round game. I think Van Gerwen, as I've said, is a good thing to beat Price. And if they're both in the semi-finals, the way they are, momentum players over this format, they've both shown that once they get through that first round, they're very, very adept at keeping it going. I was really surprised to see Johnny Clayton fall at the semi-final last week, because normally he's a good thing to kick on and go get that final and maybe even win it. So, yeah, I don't know. Because of the way the first rounds have come out, I do fancy Van Gerwen and Clayton at 6-1. And hey, 6-1's a working man's price still, in it. You can still enjoy yourself with that on.
Yep, we'll take a 6-1 every day of the week. Yeah, I am going to back James Wade. I can get 10-11 for him to beat Smith in the first round. So the Wade fantastic Premier League form will be coming to an end officially, because I'm on. But I also like Van Gerwen to beat Price as well, for the reasons given. Why we're here, Pyman, we'll just have a little bit of a chat about the weekend's action, the German Darts Grand Prix. Don't ask me about the qualifying criteria, because I really don't get it. There was, some of basically it's the top 16 from the PDC order of merit, so all the names that we know and love, plus basically a load of randomers from the European Tour, anyone from Wesley Plazer, Thomas Junghans, Adam Gaulas, Max Hopp, John O'Shea, Barry Van Peer, etc., etc., etc. The final was made up of Luke Humphries, who played majestically well in the semi-final with a statement win of 7-0 against Michael van Gerwen. He just basically couldn't miss. Bulldozed Van Gerwen, and Van Gerwen was a man in good. He's been playing well. He averaged 102 and 103. Van Gerwen going into that game averaged 105, 103, and 102. Then came up against Luke Humphries and got bashed 7-0. That shows you just how good Luke Humphries was. And then Humphries went on to the final and was favourite to win the final against a man called Martin Lukeman, that not many of the listeners and viewers will know of. Pieman's had his eye on him on the tour this year, Martin Lukeman. He gets his belly out on stage. Things we've not seen since the days of
Colin. I've got my eye
Colin.
on him, I think.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, we've not seen belly on stage since the days of Colin Jaws Lloyd. So that's great to see. And Martin Lukeman was a breath of fresh air, to be honest. He's got a bit of a no-nonsense style. He's got basically no backswing, Martin Lukeman. He's got no backswing at all. He brings the dart up out of his hand and puts it straight there. He doesn't even bring it back to. So that's interesting. But anyway, Martin Lukeman made the final. It was a 250 to 1 shot. Made the final, played well to get there, beat Heta. Me and Pieman was on Heta, and then Lukeman done him. But yeah, 8-2 in the final. Luke Humphries, majestic. Anything else to talk about, Pieman? Feel free to weigh in.
Yeah, well, I could quickly qualify the qualifying criteria. I could quickly put that one to bed for you. So we have the top ranked players, as you say, they automatically get through into these Euro Tour events, and then similar to a Players' Championship, you have Euro Tour qualifiers. So we've had the qualifiers for Euro Tours 1, 2, and 3 already. They'll just be happening on a random Friday every now and then. You'll be able to follow them on Dart Connect, similar to a Pro Tour. And anyone with a new tour card, with a tour card active, is eligible to enter the qualifiers. They have to win 2 or 3 games to get in to that particular event. And then they'll be topped up with some local players, depending on where it is. So it's really good, the Euro Tour, to be honest. It's got that competitive edge to it because the people that have got there are either the top dogs, they've had to go and qualify off their own back, so they're kind of there deservedly, or they're a hometown kind of link and they're playing in front of a raucous crowd. So we see some really nice events, similar to the World Series, where if you mentioned Damon Heta, he made his breakthrough there, playing in front of a home crowd in Australia and beating a load of top dogs, and that would go on to lead to him turning pro and coming over here, and he's absolutely flying at the moment, Damon. So yeah, it's good to watch these events. Wesley Placier, you mentioned him, definitely deserves a mention.
Big fella.
He is a big man, Wesley.
How
You
old
would not
is he,
want to
Pine?
bump into this man in a dark alley, let me tell you. Wesley Placier, I was so impressed with him.
Is he like deceptively young?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, younger than he looks.
Yeah,
tough paper round for Wesley, but what a player. I was really impressed with him. He kept dumping out people he had no right to dump out.
180s galore as well.
Yeah, it was no fluke. So he's definitely one to keep an eye on. Yeah, there was a lot of good performances. As you say, Heta looked he looked the winner, to be honest. At semi-final stage, he looked all over the winner. But maybe this is just a part in his career where we've seen it in the past with players. You take out a big hitter, and then it can be difficult when you come into a next game as a favourite. And that's what he was against Martin Lukeman. Martin Lukeman was still able to channel that kind of underdog mentality of, no one expects me to win this. If I win it, it's great. And maybe it just weighed Damo down a bit because he didn't quite reach the heights that he'd reached in his previous couple of games. But all the signs really good for Damon Heta. I mean, the last 3 or 4 tournaments we've seen him, he's playing like a top 10 in the world player. So I'll tell you now, I'm looking at Australia for the World Cup. I'm looking at Heta in the match play. He's got to be on your radar if you're a value seeker because he's just playing so well.
Well, a wise man said to me a couple of weeks ago, Pieman, that Heta should be back for any and every tournament in the region of 25 to 1. And I would not argue a single word with that. A couple of shout outs from me. Martin Schindler. He's playing fantastic this season. He really is. I was on the Martin Schindler Express towards the back end of last season on the Pro Tours. He didn't get me any money in the bank during that period, but this year he's already made a final of the Pro Tour. He averaged 109 in one of the earlier games against Ryan earlier at the weekend and came up short against Lukeman. He's on fire. 2 players that are really struggling. Gabe Clement, fellow German, struggling real bad. He will not be the German number 1 if he carries on the way he's going, and Schindler will definitely be that. And I was also going to shout out Jose de Souza. He's not in form, that boy. He's not in form. He was doing okay on the Pro Tour a few weeks ago when I last saw him, maybe about a month ago. he's not reaching the heights that he was a couple of years ago, Jose, and he's really struggling in TV tournaments particularly. Not that this was one, but it was a big stage tournament, but not on TV, if you see what I mean. Crowd, not on TV, but he's not doing very well at the moment, Jose.
Yeah, and I should just say, give it to Luke Humphries as well to go and win that. It was a proper tournament. He did it the right way, and I believe I read on Darts Oracle that since the records began, whenever that was, I think early 2000s, that is the first time that Michael van Gerwen's been restricted to one dart at a double in a match in his career. So what can you say? You can't find the superlatives for that. And he's a player that's growing in confidence, and we've just seen the rise of Luke Humphries. It's taken a little bit longer than many anticipated, but in this last year, he really has gone up to that top table, and I couldn't put anyone off him. I think he's priced accordingly now, probably where he should be, but you're always getting a run for your money with Luke Humphries. You're never going into any game thinking that he can't win it anymore, and that's a testament to where he is.
Final snippet of the week. Dan Dawson on commentary said that he has a £100 bet with Rob Cross. That Rob Cross said if he was asked to play in the Premier League in 2023, he would turn it down. And Dan Dawson has bet him that if that invitation does occur, that he would of course take it. And Rob Cross appears adamant to the tune of £100 that he will not play in the Premier League next year, even if he's invited. I'll leave you with that one to ponder, and we'll be back next week with more Premier League previews. Thanks for tuning in.